What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. I'm Michigan Sports Talk here. In this one, we go over Sherrone Moore naming who the interim head coach will be for his 2-game suspension coming up, as well as why he made that decision. Plus, he also provides some big injury updates here on Zeke Berry, Giovanni Ohadi, Rod Moore, who we could see this weekend, and also the rest of the cornerback room. Michigan looking to get their cornerback depth back. And Sherrone Moore also speaks on Bryce Underwood using his legs, when they will unleash that. Also, the offensive line struggles against Oklahoma and their identity on offense. And we also go over some outstanding performances from some Michigan commits, including the 5-star Savion Hyder putting up crazy numbers. It's all going to be in this video and more, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so before we do go ahead and get right into it here, I first do want to give a shout out to our channel members. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. And we did get some new ones, so welcome everybody. Thank you again. And obviously I look forward to, seeing all your guys' comments. And thank you to everybody for just showing up every single video as usual. I appreciate you guys. But also wanted to mention, I do have a podcast now, so if you want to listen to the audio while you're in the car, whatever, so you can go ahead and do that now. Link down below in the description for my podcast. But Michigan obviously losing to Oklahoma in a tough win, 24-13. Went over my key takeaways in yesterday's video, but in the latest AP poll, the Wolverines coming in at number 23 as they look to bounce back this week, this Saturday against Central Michigan at noon. So Michigan going from number 15 to number 23, which was around where I thought they would fall, and now they look to bounce back this week. And one of the biggest storylines obviously going into this week is the Sherrone Moore suspension. 2-game suspension. He'll be gone for the Central Michigan game and the Nebraska game. And Sherrone Moore did announce today in his press conference that Biff Poggi will be the interim head coach for the Wolverines, as obviously the only really other candidate that could have been the interim head coach during his suspension would be offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey, as he has head coaching experience too. But Biff Poggi does have head coaching experience at both the high school and the college level. He just served as the Charlotte head coach before returning back to Michigan. And obviously we talked about Biff Poggi before, was a big X factor while Jim Harbaugh was here, and Michigan's culture shift while Harbaugh was here. And Sherrone Moore, speaking on the interim coach during his suspension, he said, "We'll operate as a collective unit. Chip will handle the offense, Wink will handle the defense, JB will handle the special teams, but the overall operations coach, Biff Poggi, will stand as the interim, and it'll flow like normal." So he said everything will flow the same. Our players, they'll be ready to go. And on Biff Poggi, he said obviously he's been in the program before. He was a huge help for me when I was a coordinator, offensive line coach at first, and just has a general feeling of how the program goes. But just in general, his love for the players, most importantly, his knowledge of everybody in our building and keeping the cohesion in the building was huge. But I also wanted our coordinators to be able to do what they do and continue their jobs as they go through the season. So Biff's right there by my side, so he sees that, he understands exactly how I feel. Obviously he's not me, but the players have a lot of respect for him and they love him. Now, he did state that he will be allowed to coach the team this week and be hands-on in preparation. He did confirm, and then that is before starting his punishment at noon kickoff on Saturday against Central Michigan. So then he also did give some updates on some injury updates here on some Michigan players. But first, alright, so I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Sleeper. We've talked about him before. Guys, if you aren't using the Sleeper app for daily fantasy football, you are missing out. And tonight we got Monday Night Football, JJ McCarthy making his debut. And right now you get a special offer, basically a free pick, JJ McCarthy to pass for more than 0.5 passing yards. And I'm also taking former Michigan tight end Colson Loveland to have more than 27.5 receiving yards. Let me know what you guys think about those picks. Gonna be a good one tonight. And let me know any of your picks for tonight's game. And also don't forget, first time depositors can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using promo code MST. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Link down below in the description. Check out Sleeper today. But let's go ahead and continue here, talk about the injury updates here. First, cornerback Zeke Berry. He did exit the Oklahoma game and was replaced by freshman Jaden Sanders. But Sherrone Moore said he's just got a very mild lower body injury and that they'll see, how he progresses through the week, but he looks good. And he also said that we'll see about offensive lineman Giovanni El-Hadi, who also suffered a lower left leg injury against Oklahoma. He said that's day to day, so we'll take a look at that and see how that looks, as obviously that is a big one right there. Michigan needs Giovanni El-Hadi back. Hopefully, they get him back for the Nebraska game at the latest, and I'm sure they won't push anybody back to get him back for this Central Michigan game, and hopefully the Wolverines get healthy for that Nebraska game. And then as far as tight end Marlon Klein though, Marlon Klein, he warmed up at Oklahoma, obviously did not play, but Sherrone Moore said he's looking better and is expected to practice a little bit on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then they'll go from there. Marlon Klein was a big absence for this Michigan offense and for Bryce Underwood especially out there as a target, but injury doesn't seem to be too serious. Should be able to get back soon here, if not for this game against Central Michigan. As far as safety Rod Moore, seems like he wanted to go out there and play against Oklahoma, and Sherrone Moore said he has a high probability of playing this weekend against Central Michigan. He said we think there's a good chance that Rod could play this week. The staff has been very cautious with him though, and that the captain wanted to play at Oklahoma on Saturday, but obviously he was dressed and went through warm-ups and everything. They did not play him though, so maybe we'll get our first glimpse at Rod Moore this weekend against Central Michigan before he should be full go for that Nebraska game, which is a big one. And as far as the cornerback depth, we saw the weakness there. Michigan has had some injuries though. Shamari Earls went out in the game against New Mexico, didn't play against Oklahoma, but he should return this week. Sherrone Moore said looks like possibly get Earls and then also cornerback Caleb Anderson back this week, so that'll be huge for the corner depth. Michigan was also without Josiah Edmond in that Oklahoma game. He said that he should be returning soon as well. So all of a sudden now, these cornerbacks are getting healthy. Michigan only had Zeke Berry and Jair Hill in there with both Shamari Earls and Josiah Edmond out against Oklahoma. That was huge, and we saw the weakness there in that game at times. Michigan had to play the freshman Jaden Sanders when Zeke Berry went out, so definitely need that room to get healthy again before that Nebraska game, and looks like they are on their way to getting healthy. So that's some injury updates right there. As far as Sherrone Moore coaching, what it will look like for him this week, he said, I'll be here, I'll be coaching hard. This week's about the how, it's not necessarily the what, so we're really going to attack all the details. Obviously it's going to be a big week for him coaching this team. Following the loss to Oklahoma, they got a lot to learn off of that tape, that's for sure. And as far as the offensive line against Oklahoma, which I mentioned in my video yesterday, that is the biggest concern I think for this Michigan offense. He said, it was consistency because there's times where there's huge holes, there's times where there's movement at the line of scrimmage, and there's times where there's things that are leaky and loose, and it's got to be consistent. It's a collective thing. It's not just the players, not just the coaches, it's everybody together, and we'll continue to work forward to make sure we clean all that stuff up. And obviously losing El-Hadi didn't help the case for the Michigan offensive line against Oklahoma, but that group has a lot to work on, and they got to step it up here, especially with a young quarterback, Bryce Underwood, in there. And obviously, Chip Lindsey also has to, find their identity, I think, offensively. The game plan against Oklahoma obviously did not work, so they got to go back to the drawing board. They got to come up with what their identity is going to be offensively this season. Also talked about Bryce Underwood using his legs as a weapon. He said he does. We will at some point. You run your quarterback, you'd better have two. I've always believed that, even did that with JJ. JJ wanted to run every game, and I was like, no, you're not going to get hit. You're going to get hurt or something, and obviously we know now that Michigan didn't really have much quarterback depth behind JJ McCarthy, which is why we didn't see him run the ball that much. And it's the same deal here with Bryce Underwood. Mikey Keene has been dealing with an injury. Right now Jaden Davis is the backup, and obviously they would rather try to win without him using his legs than potentially risk him getting hurt and potentially having the season go down the drain because of that injury. But we said we will, and I think there's parts in that we tried to in that game. They just were pretty good at not letting us because they didn't want him to run, and I think there's ways we can get him to run in different ways and make sure he's protected. So we'll work that as we go game by game and have a strategy for that. But obviously if Michigan wants to have this offense reach its full potential, it's going to come with Bryce Underwood using his legs. But, as far as the offensive identity, he said it's going to be violent, going to be physical, want to be explosive. We're creating explosive runs. We want more. We want to create more explosive passes too, and we will do that. But just consistent as we go through every single game, and let the players trust themselves and let it loose, have fun. And he said, I think they'll do that as we go through the week. As far as the Bryce Underwood, Justice Haynes, moment they had on the sideline, he said in the moment, that's just competitiveness. They both want to be right. They both want the team to be successful. But obviously we saw them, together celebrating when Justice Haynes hit that big touchdown run. So, they squashed it right away. But, you also love to see that. It's the competitiveness in both of them. You want to see that emotion when things aren't going right. And the fact that they were able to squash it, able to, get through it. And then after, obviously, celebrating together. I mean, Bryce Underwood was with him in the end zone, celebrating, dapping each other up. And, Sherrone, he said as a group, as a team, those guys stick together. Or they stuck together, and to see him in here yesterday working was a huge piece. They're in here watching film together, talking, so it happens. You don't want that to happen on the sideline, but it was squashed immediately, and then you saw them celebrating together, so that's just the competitive piece that most competitors have. So that's what Sherrone Moore had to say. And I do want to talk about how some Michigan commits performed over the weekend as high school football seasons are underway. We'll first start with the 5-star running back Savion Hyder, rushed for 328 yards, 3 touchdowns on 16 carries in a 36-0 win. I mean, you just can't make that up. Absolutely incredible, insane stats right there. And now he's making the case to be the #1 player in the 2026 class, especially if he keeps putting up numbers like that. And Michigan's quarterback commit Brady Smeagol passed for 321 yards, 5 touchdowns, also rushed for 42 yards in, unfortunately, a 56-35 loss, but he still put up some good numbers. Travis Johnson, the wide receiver, recorded 6 receptions, 56 yards, and a 24-6 win. And how about Jalen Pyle, one of the most underrated recruits here in the 2026 class, still a 3-star, but he had 9 receptions for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 38-21 win. The tight end Matt Ludwig had 2 receptions, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns in a 56-14 win. So those are how some of Michigan commits performed over the weekend. But with that, that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to go ahead, drop a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more if you are new around here. I greatly appreciate it. And other than that, we will see you guys in the next video. Go Blue.